In this video, we will discuss user customization, configuration, function setup, general tab, tax settings. Here you can set tax rates for accounting module and inventory module respectively. And we will start by accounting tax rates. For the accounting 1 module, you can set the tax rate for each sales and purchases. And if you click sales tax, then the list of tax type codes for sales, accounting sales, will be shown. These tax type codes will be used when you enter a voucher in the accounting 1 module. In tax type field, you can click the drop box and select one of the existing tax type codes. And you can click new to register a new tax type code, or click on an existing tax type code to edit the existing settings like the name of tax code, tax rate, and error margin, and the default template for invoice. And by setting a particular tax error margin amount, you can make your tax calculation more accurate. For example, this accounting sale tax code has a tax rate of 8.75%, which means that if pre-tax is $10,000, its tax amount will be $875. As tax error margin, since you've set $1 as error margin, then if you enter an amount which exceeds 8.75%, then the program will restrict saving the accounting slip. So for example, if you select this tax type code and enter an accounting slip, if you enter a wrong tax amount like 880, and if you click save, the voucher will not be saved because of the tax error margin set for this tax type code. However, if you edit the tax amount to fit the error margin, for example 876, then the slip will be saved. So please use the error margin function. And next, in default invoice template, you can select the default invoice template for this tax type code. So for the invoice that you created just before, if you print the slip in an invoice form, then the invoice will be printed in the template selected in default invoice template field. So since you selected invoice default template, it will be printed in invoice default template. And you can set the order of sorting so that tax codes are sorted in accounting input screens based on the order that you set in tax rate setup menu. And if you need another tax rate in addition to the default tax rate codes, you can click New button to create a new tax rate code. And the same goes for accounting purchases tax type codes. You can edit the existing tax type codes by clicking their code, and you can click New to register a new purchase tax type code. And moving on, we will discuss the tax rates for the inventory module. So the tax rate will be applied to the amounts entered in inventory slips like sales slips and purchase slips. And you can apply tax rate settings by 4 standards: by transaction type, by item, by location, and the common default tax rate. And the 4 criteria will apply in order of by transaction type first, and then by item criteria, by location, and lastly, the default rate will be applied. And for the inventory module, you can set it for separately for sales and purchases and others, similarly as in accounting tax rate codes. And we will look over by transaction type tax rates first. If you click Sales Transaction Type Tax Codes, the existing transaction type codes will be listed, and you can find these transaction type codes in Inventory 1, Sales, New Sales or New Sales Order, New Quotation in each input screens. In Transaction Type field, you can find the transaction type codes that can be set up in User Customization. And you can use New button to create a new transaction type code, or click on an existing text type code to edit the settings. You can edit the name of the transaction type or edit the tax rate applicable for this transaction type. And in tax rate field, default option means that it'll follow the settings of inventory tax default settings 8.7D5. And if you check set manually, you can manually type in the corresponding tax rate. And next, in default tax type field, you can select the accounting tax type code, which will be linked with this inventory transaction type code. And the accounting tax type code will apply when you invoice inventory slips. So for example, for taxable inventory transaction type code, sale tax type code of the accounting module is connected. So if you enter a new slip in New Sales menu, Inventory New Sales menu, if you select taxable and enter a sales slip, and invoice the inventory sales slip, then the text type code, which is connected to this transaction type code, will be automatically set in text type code based on the user customization connection. And you can edit the accounting text type code as well. And by default, only two transaction type codes will appear. So all taxable and non-taxable at all type. And if you want to create a special transaction type for sales on card, then you need to first go to accounting tax type settings and create the tax type code for sales on card. And then you need to go to inventory tax setup, and in by transaction type column, you need to create a new transaction type code for sales on card, and then connect the accounting tax type code that you just newly generated. So right now, I will show you an example of how to set up a new tax rate for, let's say, California tax rate. So let's say 15% will be applied as California tax rate. Then you need to first go to the accounting sales tax setup menu and create a new tax type code for California tax rate, which is 15%. And I will set the sort order to 0 and set the error margin to $5. And after creating this tax rate code, you need to go to Inventory Tax Setup menu and go to By Transaction Type and create a new transaction type code for the inventory module. Let's name it to California tax rate and connect the accounting tax type code that you just generated. and set the sort order to 0. And set the tax rate to 15% and click Save. Then a new tax rate will be set for both inventory and accounting module. And then you will be able to use the newly generated tax rates in inventory new sales and also in accounting sales invoice as well. So please set up the tax rates that your company needs and use them for managing your sales. And moving on, we will discuss how to set up tax rates for each item code. If you click Settings and click on the corresponding item code and go to Item Info tab. Then in tax rate field for each sales and purchases, you can manually type in a particular percentage for tax rate. And here the default option will follow the default inventory tax rates. And if the item is duty-free, then you can check Set Manually and enter 0% as tax rate. And you can also set the tax rate for by location. Click Settings and click on the corresponding location code. And in tax rate field, you can set each transaction's tax rate to either default or either a random percentage. You can manually type in the corresponding percentage or check default and follow the default tax rate. So in this way, you can set up tax rates and transaction type codes for inventory and accounting module. And you can edit the existing tax type codes, or you can add a new tax type code for managing your sales.